Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Vixens Who Rule here on the Realm Network. You know what the funny thing is? When I was starting to plan out the network and I knew I was going to have various shows on the network, I knew there were going to be some video shows. I knew there were just going to be some audio podcast shows. I knew there were going to be some blogs. But the Vixen show, this is a show just dedicated to women. It's all about women. I celebrate women. The only guest on the show every week, all women. And for some reason or another, I initially scheduled the Vixen show to be just an audio podcast show. But then literally as I'm getting into it and I'm lining on guests to come on the show, I'm noticing that every single woman who's coming on the show is beautiful in their own right. And why am I going to have an audio show with beautiful women when I'm going to be the only one that can see these beautiful women? So I had to make a little bit of a change of plans. And all of a sudden, Vixens Who Ruled became a video show. And you're going to understand why in a minute. Because my next guest is somebody I had the absolute pleasure of working for at TNA. This guest, I would say, out of all the people I've ever worked with throughout my career, male, female, this individual was, in my opinion, the most unlikely to be a professional wrestler. I mean, if you met this woman on the street, you would never think in a million years she was in the professional wrestling business. My first guess, to be honest with you, I don't mean to make a blush, but my first guess would be that she was like a princess or something that lived in this castle and she tried on glass slippers. That's the first thing that I would come up with. But again, she doesn't fit that wrestling mold, which benefited her because, in my opinion, it really made her stand out. And she had some tools, I think, that were far superior than a lot of both men and women I worked with. And we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm talking about the one, the only, the beautiful, the stunning, the vivacious Katarina Winters, also known as Winter. Katarina, are you there?
Hello. You say such wonderful things about me.
I have to say this. Listen, we set up this interview at the last minute, right? And you said to me, I need a little bit of time. I'm disheveled. I'm this, I'm that. I gave you an hour. Look at you. You look like you're ready to go to the princess ball over there, like a big pumpkin's going to come roll up outside your door and take you away. Look at you.
Well, thank you. Well, it's interesting, though, that you say that about princess and all. Because I've always been very tomboyish. I've never been very girly at all.
See, I wouldn't. I got to be honest with you. Like I've had a lot of the I've had a lot of the knockouts on, and like I immediately can pinpoint the tomboys and who was beat. I mean, I can usually do it like that. I mean, like Angelina Love, for instance. Velvet. You kind of knew they had tomboy in them. But right. With you, I'm looking at like royalty and you lived in a palace. I never see you as a tomboy.
Well, I mean, I try and stay elegant, I guess, to an extent.
Now, Kat, you grew up, you were born and you also grew up in Germany. Is this correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Now, do you know that just about a month ago, I went for the very first time to Germany?
I didn't know that. Where did you go?
Well, Kat, I'll tell you this first. I'll back it up for a minute. First of all, let me tell you that I took 3 years of German in high school. Like, I didn't take Spanish like the other kids. I wound up taking 3 years of German. The only thing I learned in the 3 years of German was Vixens. That's all. That's all I could say after 3 years. As a matter of fact, let me tell you something. I was so bad in German, And in New York, like after the 3 years, you had to take something called a Regents. And it was like a really big test. And, you know, you had to pass this Regents to get your Regents diploma. I was horrible. I was horrible in German. I didn't know anything. And my teacher's name was a feline, Fräulein. How do you say that? Fräulein Haug. Haug was the last name. But she loved me so much, and she knew I was so bad at Germany. Do you know what she did when the Regents came?
What did she do?
She put me next to the smartest kid in the class so I could cheat off his test.
No.
And I swear, I got every answer off the test. I got like an 80-something on my Regents. I would have got a 30. She knew I cheated on the entire thing, and she set it up that way. But
wow.
Anyway, I went to Germany about a month ago. There's something I really liked, and there's something I really hated.
What did you like and what did you hate?
Well, I loved the Wiener Schnitzel.
Right.
Now,
the
Kat,
real one, not the Wiener Schnitzel that we have here.
No, the real. But Kat, I got to tell you, this is how ignorant I am and how stupid I am. For some reason or another, I thought a Wiener Schnitzel was like, you know, one of those bratwursts.
Oh. Yeah, it's not like that at all.
It's not like that at all, and I'm waiting to get this bratwurst looking hot dog gimmick, and then it's kind of like a pork loin breaded, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like a fillet thing.
Delicious.
Like they bang on it with a hammer, and then they put breading on it or something.
Oh, it was so good. So I love the Wiener Schnitzel. Can I tell you what drove me crazy, Kat?
What?
Not one single show over there is in English. I put on the television. I would have settled for an infomercial.
Right.
Everything was in German. I couldn't watch TV over there for a couple of days.
Well, that's what happens when you go to a foreign country.
Well,
but you should already be grateful that Germans speak English so well, and that they would love to speak English too.
Oh no, I was very, very, very grateful about that, because you got to understand, I went to London first, and it was like no big deal. You know, everything was in English. Everybody spoke English. Then I go to Germany, and the first time I knew I was in trouble was everything at the airport was in German now. You know, the English was out the window. But thank God, you know, it's a strange thing, Kat. I got to ask you this question. You know, you were born and raised in Germany, but yet everybody in Germany, they speak both languages.
Yes, that's true. It's mandatory to learn English at school you start when you're about 10, and then you continue.
Well, now, Kat, isn't that kind of difficult, though? Because you're really, you know, at that age, you know, you're kind of, trying to learn the structure of the German language and the English language at the same time.
Well, not really, because you speak German naturally.
Yeah, but you still got to learn, you know, your verb.
Grammar and stuff like that, but you know what you're doing and before you know why you're doing it, I suppose.
Yeah, but it was so funny because everybody's speaking in English, and I was a manager of this heel guy over there, and all of a sudden he comes in the ring, and like I'm supposed to be managing the guy, he cuts this promo in straight German, so I had to turn around and say, I don't know a word he said, but I agree with everything that he said.
That's crazy.
You know?
Why? If you're the manager, wouldn't you be talking?
Well, I would think so. You know, I would think so. But this guy went off in this German diatribe. I had no idea what he was talking about. It was unbelievable.
Right. He wanted his spotlight too.
Yeah. Now, Kat, you said you were a tomboy growing up. Does that tell me that you had brothers, other siblings? What was it about that upbringing that made you a tomboy?
Well, I had two other sisters. I have one older and one younger. And I don't know if there was anything specific that made me a tomboy. Those were the times when we used to play outside, right, and climb trees and things like that. That would be really, what we used to play doing, and cops and robbers and all that thing. And I guess I was never really that interested in dolls and clothes and makeup. And also, well, when I first went to school, all my friends really were other boys. It just happened that way.
Yeah, well, I wonder why, Kat. Go ahead.
I was fine. But
Now, are you telling me that now, Kat? Are you telling me that you look like that at 5?
No, that's what I'm telling you is that I didn't.
I don't believe that. But go ahead. I'm not going to.
I like playing with bricks and trains rather than dolls. And then, as I grew up, I always felt more comfortable, around more tomboyish type of either boys or, other girls that weren't really into getting glammed up. So, and I think all my friends, we weren't really into fashion and things like that.
Now, Kat, from what I understand and what I'm reading, and this could be wrong, so you could verify this to me, but you kind of saw wrestling for the first time, United States wrestling, American wrestling. You really didn't even know that wrestling existed where you were from. Is that correct?
That is correct. And it took me a while. I mean, those were the days before internet too. Wink, wink.
And Kat, I also read that one of the people that you were very first drawn to was the Ultimate Warrior. Was that correct?
That is correct. Because you have to imagine, now I'm a 12-year-old, 14-year-old girl, and I'm watching this show, and there's these guys that I never seen like even bodybuilders or anything before. So you have these guys that are huge, larger than life, and then these strange characters. And I'm thinking this is a real person. So I'm thinking the Ultimate Warrior, really, that is who he is. He's the Ultimate Warrior. Nobody knows where he comes from, right? Parts unknown.
Right.
Nobody really knows where he was born or grew up or any of those things. And he's just this wild madman that runs to the ring and shakes on the ropes and then has a wrestling match and fights for his life. And I thought that was the most fascinating thing I'd ever heard of.
You know what, Kat, I want to ask you this because out of I'm not even going to say all the women, out of everybody like I worked with, I'd say you were in the top 3 of theatrical. You were very, very theatrical. So when you're seeing this for the first time, the Warrior and wrestling in the United States, are you looking at this as like a physical, a sporting, entertainment, or are you looking at the theatrical side of it and the character side on it, or are you looking at the complete package?
I would say definitely more the character side of it. I also, growing up, I was a big reader. That was my main hobby, should we say, was to lie on the couch and read a book. So I would read all day long, and which really made basically my imagination go kind of wild. So for me, it was always about, the more outrageous the characters, the more, unexplained mystery, was even more fascinating for me.
But Kat, wouldn't it, I mean, listen, and how old are you at this time when you're first discovering wrestling?
I'm not sure. I think when I very first saw the first thing, I was like maybe 10 or so.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say at 10 years old, you look like you look now.
Smaller.
Oh, okay. But Kat, I would think this. Listen, here's the thing. Let me ask you this, because now you're on that path, and we're going to get to that a little bit later on. But yeah. I would think, Kat, with all the reading that you're doing, really liking stories, really liking characters. Listen, you're obviously, even as a little girl, you're an attractive girl. Wouldn't the easier route for you have been acting? I mean, why didn't you just go into acting as compared to, this physical sport of wrestling?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because that's what I was doing, actually, from when I was little. When I was about 10, I was in the children's chorus at our local theater, and it was a professional theater, so we actually got paid little tiny bits of money for that. I also did a lot of school plays and things like that. And then when I finally graduated high school, quote unquote, and went to university, I studied film and drama. And that was absolutely what my path was. And that also goes into that I didn't know that we had professional wrestling in Europe, So wrestling kind of just happened almost coincidentally. but because I was such a big fan of it by that time, that it was something that I really wanted to try and do.
Well, that's fascinating, Kat, because like just you telling that story, listen, I'm not going to say it would have been easy for you to become an actress. I mean, we know that's not easy. You live in LA now, you know firsthand how that is. And, as beautiful as you are, all the girls in LA are beautiful, but yeah, that's really, that's a unique decision to make, especially for a female, somebody like you. You're studying acting, you're going to university for acting, you love this wrestling, but to actually make the decision that I am going to get into this physical world, I mean, was it something that you really thought about, or was like, something just inspiring you and telling you to do this?
Oh, I didn't really think about it at all. But for me, it wasn't like a career switch at the time. For me, it was like, I mean, I get into things, I jump into things pretty quickly. It was the same when I was at university. I decided I wanted to try Thai boxing. I met somebody who was a Thai boxing instructor, and I always wanted to, do some kind of kickboxing or whatever. So the next week I was there learning that, and then progress from there. Or if I hear about a class that I want to do, I'll jump right in and start doing it. So with wrestling, it was the same thing. It was I completely by coincidence saw a British wrestling show. This was when I was in London. I saw it advertised, and I went to see it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, I can do this if those people can. And then I talked to some of the wrestlers, and I found out about a school, and I just started going training, and not for any other reason than simply just to learn how to do all that cool stuff that I'd only seen on TV up until then. So that for me, the thrill was to go and learn. And then once I started learning and I realized that they were doing shows and things like that, that's when I started,
Now, Kat, I'm assuming, because I know it's different in London, and you're talking about the university, and I learned when I was over there that university is only 3 years, when over here college is 4 years. So I'm assuming you graduated from college.
Yes, I did.
So you graduate from college with a degree in acting?
It wasn't acting. It was a BA honors in film and drama, and it really included everything from directing to how to operate the camera, from how to edit and everything like that.
Well, Kat, when you originally went to university, though, what were you going for? I mean, before this wrestling came in your life, what did you really inspire to be?
Well, initially my thought was, to be an actress and to go to drama school, and it was actually my mom's idea to get a proper degree rather than just to do, drama school. And then when I found this course, and it was really practical, and I'd also, when I was younger, I'd done writing and things like that. So the idea of being able to, be creative, on the other side of the camera or on the other side of the stage or things like that was also very interesting to me.
Okay, so Kat, now you get involved in the local wrestling scene, mainly in London.
Yes. Well, not London, but around that area.
You and I have something in common. As I'm reading through your bio, I made a friend of my time over in London, somebody I was really drawn to. I'll tell you why I was drawn to him. 2 reasons, Kat. First of all, I don't care what anybody says. The people in England are so much nicer and polite than the people in the United States. I had this conversation with Spud a while ago, because, he's been living in the States now for a while. And I basically said, bro, is it me, or are the people in England so much nicer than in the United States? And he basically said to me that the people in England were just working me because I was like the new guy in town. I don't believe that for a second, because everybody I ran into was nice. But I ran into this one guy that I'm reading was an influence of yours, and I very nice to me, very open to me. But you know what drew me to this individual? What we started talking about?
What?
And you probably don't even know this about him. He's a huge BG fan. So Me and him are talking about the Bee Gees, and I'm really digging this guy. He's got such a great personality. I'm talking about Johnny Storm.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Great. One of the greatest guys in the world, no?
He's amazing, and he's hilarious. And even his matches are hilarious. He's really, I mean, he brings comedy in like somebody like Colt Cabana. I actually had the pleasure of watching them together in a match. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
Hysterical.
You know what cracked me up about this, Johnny Storm, that I really love? Because you would never see a wrestler do this in the United States. Because listen, Kat, a lot of them have egos. A lot of them think more about themselves than they really are. You know, Colt Cabana would probably do this. But the thing I loved about Johnny was, like, we were at a show and we were, you know, selling merch in the back, and he was literally next to me, so he's talking my ear off. But Kat, here's the funniest thing. He was selling wrestling masks, and he was wearing one of the masks so he could sell the merch. And the whole time he's talking to me, he's wearing this ridiculous wrestling mask, and I'm trying to have a serious conversation. But I thought that was just great about the guy, because he didn't have an ego, and it's like, hey, man, if I got to wear this thing to sell it, I'll wear it.
Absolutely. Yeah. He's a great guy.
And then another guy, big influence, that I got to meet, and I was very, very impressed by, great guy, Alex Shane was a big influence in London.
Yes. I mean, it's incredible what he's done for British wrestling, you know, over there, from leading FWA when FWA was, you know, the main company in England. That was really, a lot of it was that he's doing, and now with the British, you know, Wrestling Talk TV and everything like that, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I went to the studio down there, Kat, and they have your picture plastered all over the place down there.
Oh, yay.
Okay, so Kat, so now we're learning the business. Now we're in London, around England area. Now, how do you make that transgression into the United States?
Well, what happened was, I'd been wrestling for a while, and I saw on the WWE website they were doing these open tryouts where you could send in your information, and then they would select so many people to come and do a tryout when they were in England. So I sent my stuff in, and I went to a tryout, but nothing came of it. It was maybe like 10 of us, and, you know, got in the ring and just wrestled each other a little bit. And yeah, so a few months later, I met Tommy Dreamer at an independent show in England. And he said to me, well, if we come back to England next time, give me a call and I'll get you another tryout. So he did, and they hired me.
Oh, you see that? I never knew the Dreamer Cat connection before. That's the first time I'm hearing that story.
We go way back.
So now he gets you the second tryout. Now you make the roster.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, Kat, listen, this show is a little bit different because, listen, I don't have like all these notes and everything, and I can't go through your career and what you did at WWE and here, there, and everywhere, because I'm just so sick and tired of that, and you've been asked that question to nauseum. I listen, I have to tell people this when they come on my show so they understand. I've been like called the Oprah Winfrey of podcasting. So
I would second that, absolutely.
Thank you, Kat. So listen, so I don't have notes. I don't go, well, in 2003 you beat so and so, and I could care less. Okay. Here's where I want to pick it up though, Kat, because I'm seeing a trend here, and it's funny, Kat. I had Terri Runnels yesterday, and I did you ever meet Terri Runnels?
I maybe once shook a hand, but other than that, I don't think I have.
Yeah, and we had this conversation. You know, Kat, I've been doing a lot of research lately because I'm a big advocate of women in wrestling. Mm-hmm. And I always felt that wrestling was a very, very sexist business, and I did not like that. I was vehemently against that. I saw female performers in my time, you know, who were just as popular as the male performers. No questions, hands down. I didn't like the way they got treated. You know, it was a man's world, and they made sure they let the females know that. Now, Kat, I've been doing a lot of studying, and you kind of fell right into this. I didn't force this. I just saw it. I want to ask your opinion of this, Kat. Usually, Kat, like on the big scene, we'll talk TNA, we'll talk WWE. A male performer can be on television with a major company. Maybe pushing it to 42 years old, right or wrong?
Right.
Yeah, and then Kat, like from 42 to 50 even, he can still go out on the independent scene, get in the ring, and, not have to do much and still make a little bit of money. Okay? Right. I did research, Kat, and I was looking into a lot of, the divas and the knockouts and a lot of women in wrestling. And I found out that a lot of, like the expiration date where it's kind of like, okay, let's move on. It seems to be like 30 years old with women. And I got to ask you this, Kat, when the WWE released you, yes, I noticed you were 30 years old when they released you. I would just love to know, Kat, somebody who looks the way like you do, who is as unique as you are, with the English accent, so classy. But on top of that, the acting chops, which I think is your strongest character trait, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. How and why does the WWE, release you of your contract at only 30 years old?
Well, honestly, I don't think it really had anything to do with my age. I mean, that never actually occurred to me.
Okay.
Said that. I think it's just, at the time I was very sort of nonplussed. Well, they hadn't been using me for a while. So I knew it was coming, and I was looking forward to it because I wanted to, pursue other things, at least, if I wasn't going to be, used creatively. So it was kind of like a process to where I realized I was getting used less and less. It was more and more frustrating for me creatively, because I need to be creative for my sanity as much as anything else. So then when the release came, it was like, okay, fine. Because I didn't quite understand why they weren't using me in the first place. Now, sort of looking back, between you and me, I feel that I do look better now than I did then. To be honest, I look at pictures of myself then I'm kind of like, well, I kind of see I'm not very like diva-ish.
Well, but wait a minute, Kat. Now you didn't. There wasn't much time between leaving the WWE and coming to TNA, was there?
Enough time for me to like drop 10 pounds.
I mean, listen. I may be naive. This is a guy talking. I mean, Kat, come on. Does 10 pounds make that much of a difference?
I don't know. I feel like it did to me. I much prefer, just in general, also in WWE with the dreads and everything like that, I look back and I go, what was I thinking? So when people ask me to show them some of my wrestling stuff, I usually direct them towards TNA, because I just think the winter character does more for me, visually, as well as like the whole thing that I had a great storyline and everything like that.
Well, I can understand that, Kat, but again, listen, as a guy that's a writer, the thing I'm looking for is, Kat, there's a lot of beautiful girls. So the thing I'm looking for two things. I'm looking for uniqueness, which obviously you had, and I'm looking for, acting ability. That's what we all do in wrestling. We act. So it's, to me, it's almost like, you were so unique. You had great acting chops. To me, the physical appearance would be, third. Right. But now, Kat, let me ask you this. When that release comes with the WWE, is there any thought at that point of, what, maybe I did my wrestling thing. Maybe it's time for me to move on and, go for something else? Or now are you determined to stay in this wrestling business and make a name for yourself?
Well, at this point, I'd been watching TNA for a little bit as well. And I was very much interested in going to TNA. So my first thought was like to do that. That was like definitely, that was on my, and then the idea that if I was at TNA that I could also pursue other things at the same time, which I wasn't able to do at WWE, you know, like acting gigs and things like that. That was, of course, also very attractive to me.
And listen, I'm not going to, I don't, listen, I never put myself over. I always give other people credit. But I got to tell you, honestly, I think Winter was like one of the best names I ever came up with.
It's brilliant.
I think that's a great, I love that name. I think that's a phenomenal name.
Right. And I think a lot of people agree.
Now Cal, we got to talk about this because I think this is hysterical. Okay. And we got to have this conversation now that I have you on the show, because I've had this conversation with the other party involved. Okay. Now, Kat, when you came over to TNA, I was very tight with Angelina. I listen, a lot of people don't like Angelina because they think she's a real diva, and I don't know what it was, but for some reason I was really drawn to this girl, and Angelina was always one of my favorites. I don't know why. Call me crazy. So I had a tight relationship with Angelina. Now you come in.
Yes. And
now we put you in this storyline with Angelina that, listen, Kat, I thought it was as interesting as hell. You know what I was trying to go after? And I don't know if you'll remember this, Kat, because it was a little before your time and it was popular here in the United States. I don't know if it ever got to you. Do you remember, Kat, the old soap opera called Dark Shadows?
No.
Well, Dark Shadows was about vampires, you know, the lead guy was Barnabas Collins, but they all had prior lives.
Right.
So that's where I was trying to go with you. You know, you were this Winter character, but there was a prior life in another century. And Kat, I got to be honest with you, I didn't know how good an actor you were. I didn't know that you were trained to become an actress. I just came up with the storyline. Okay. Yeah. So now, you know, you got to remember at the time, I'm very respectful to the women. I always have been. And at the time though, Kat, I'm working with Eric Bischoff, right? And Eric really wanted to kind of push the envelope as far as we possibly could, right? And Eric really at one point wanted to see a kiss. Right. So Kat, I got to tell you something. I'm there producing you guys. And I don't know if I've ever experienced this with a talent before. And Kat, I mean this. I've worked with some great people in my career, but I don't know if it was technique, and you'll tell me what it was, but you got so into the character that I was this woman should not be in the wrestling business. She needs to be on the big screen. And here's the thing. You were so convincing. And I would sit back and I'd say, holy crap. But the funny thing to me was you were so convincing that you were absolutely freaking Angelina out of her skin. And I was sitting back watching this and I'm saying to myself, this is not going to work because she is so good and Angelina is getting so freaked out. But I have to ask you, you know, listen, in my business, Kat, you know, we train wrestlers to act as well as they can. Right. You were such a phenomenal actress. Where did you draw that from? How do you do that? How do you on the spot just transform into this other person?
Well, I mean, of course, first of all, I disagree with you because I'm very critical of my performance. So I don't watch myself and go, that was brilliant. I'll watch myself and go, I could have done this better. But when it comes to acting, it's just really, I guess it's the imagination, you know. I just put myself, there's different techniques, you know, that you can use to bring up different emotion. But for me, my favorite thing would be to just imagine that I am that person under those circumstances and then just be it. And hopefully it comes out right.
Well, Kat, I got to ask you about this process, though, because I know you're doing a lot more of that now, and we're going to talk about that. But, Kat, like, explain this process to me. Is this something that, like, you have to continually be working on? Or is this something like you could just, boom, turn on and off?
I think it works differently for different people. But, I mean, definitely working on it on a continuous basis is the best idea, if you really want to do it well. And it's also because it's also partly a question of being relaxed and being practiced and things like that. If you look at kids do it naturally because they have no sort of self-criticism when it comes to playing and things like that. You watch two kids play and they really believe for a second that they are those characters, whatever, they're being knights on horses and sword fighting. They will actually, when they pick up a stick, they'll see a sword rather than an actual stick, and then we become adults and we forget how to do that. So because we're so like controlled all the time. So for us to be able to relinquish that control and just get into character, I think takes practice, which isn't necessarily work, but it takes practice and different techniques to get into that state of mind.
Kat, I got to ask you this, and like, listen, I don't think there's anybody else that I ever work with that I could ask this question to. I don't care what you say. You're a great actress.
Thank you.
You're a trained actress at the university. You're a great actress. Now, like I told you, it's a full-time job, Kat, trying to teach wrestlers how to act. You know what I mean? Because they're wrestlers. They got into this business because they wanted to wrestle. Right. So now when you're performing a scene or a vignette or a pre-tape or an in-ring, whatever you want to call it, with a wrestler who really isn't an actor, and you're so good at the craft of acting, does that at any point like ever get frustrating to you? Like, do you ever just want to shake that other person and say, what, don't you get it? I mean, I would have to think, because you were at such a different level. How did that affect you?
Well, I didn't really feel that way. I thought all the girls that I was working with TNA were great at that too. I mean, when me and Belle had our little scenes, I mean, she was amazing to play off of. To me at least, I felt that her anger and her frustration came off of so real. It was really easy for me, to play with that.
Well, I mean, they were good. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they didn't. I mean, they weren't professionally trained. They were trained by me, for crying out loud.
Well, I mean, I didn't have a problem, I think, with Angelina. I thought she was great too. I think the only thing was she wasn't a big fan of the storyline, I felt like, so that was a little bit, but other than that, I mean, she's great to work with. And then actually later on, a few months down the line, we actually had a match against each other for the first time independently, and she's fantastic in the ring as well.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, and the way this girl keeps herself in shape is like ridiculous.
Incredible, yeah. But when you say, working with actors, honestly, the same thing happens in the film industry. Just you will sometimes be working with somebody who isn't really believable, and it's difficult, and that's how you really have to, that's when you have to put a little bit more work in, but I guess that's where the craft comes in, because if somebody's really great and you're working with them, then it suddenly becomes easy.
Yeah. Now, Kat, I got to ask you a personal question, and because I have to. I'm the Oprah. Remember, we
right, yes,
you backed that up early on the Oprah. Kat,
yeah.
WWE, TNA, these guys have to be freaking hitting on you like crazy. And don't tell me they weren't, because I don't want to hear it. Somebody like you, listen, the English accent drives freaking guys crazy. We back that up with the way you look. These guys had to be coming out of the woodwork, hitting on you left and right. How I'm asking you honestly, how does somebody like you handle that? Because you're working with these people. You want to be nice. You can't be rude. Maybe a couple of guys you want to date. A lot of them you probably don't. How do you handle that situation?
Well, honestly, I love being hit on. It's very flattering to me. And so I guess I would just, if somebody was flirting with me, I might, if it was somebody that I liked, I might flirt back a little bit. And then leave them to their own devices after that. There's no reason to be, if somebody's inappropriate, that's different. But I really didn't, experience much of that at all. If somebody's trying to grab you or whatever, that's different.
Hey, Kat, let me ask you a question. And I'm not saying this ever happened to you, but again, this is why I love talking to the women. And this is a show about women. It's called Vixens Who Ruled. You ruled. You're a vixen.
I'm a vixen.
You're a vixen. So I'm asking you questions I'm trying to get in the psyche of the mind of women. And I'm not saying this ever happened to you, Kat. I'm not saying, but I know this has happened. Hey, Kat, what if you're in a situation, right, where it's like a top guy that's got stroke and that is in a good position in the company? Yeah. And he's interested in you, and he's hitting on you, and you're really not interested in this guy, but there's the fear of, oh my God, this is a top guy. He could have an impact on my career badly if I choose not to date. How do females in the business deal with that type of a situation?
Well, I guess it depends on, who you are, your own preference. To me, I think what you just described could potentially be a lose-lose situation. Because if you said no, obviously, as you said, something, somebody might react badly. But on the other hand, if you're not into it and you go for it, that's not going to work out in your favor either, not professionally or personally. So I guess you just have to do whatever feels right at the time. For me personally, if somebody hits on me that I'm not interested in that way, even if rationally I might think, oh, this might be a good idea to go for it, I just physically wouldn't be able to. So I don't have that choice, we try and be as friendly as possible.
I got to ask you this question. Listen, I was the head writer. I had a lot of influence and I had a lot of pull. How come all the women I worked with looked at me like a father figure, for crying out loud? Nobody ever flirted with me, Kat. Nobody.
Because you conducted yourself professionally, Vince.
I don't know about that. Now, Kat, can we go down a little road here? Because you kind of opened up the door for me a little bit. And we've had this conversation privately.
Okay.
But you told me when we had the conversation privately
that we would talk about it.
We could talk about it, right?
Right.
Now, listen, I don't want to say this the wrong way. So you got to jump in and correct me immediately.
Right.
Okay. Now, your philosophy is that you're not a one. I got to say this the right way. You're not a one guy gal. But right. I mean that. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. Tell the people what I mean by that, Kat.
Okay. Well, we were talking about polyamory and the idea of that you're able to form deep, intimate connections with more than one person at a time. Outside of a traditional monogamous relationship where you're only allowed to love one person and be intimate with one person. I think personally that perhaps the traditional monogamous relationship is going to be, not on its way out completely, but perhaps, more and more people are coming to find that other ways of being in a relationship, such as polyamory and things like that, are working for them. Not because they want to have sex with as many people as possible. That's the misconception that people have when I talk about this. It's about having the freedom to say, okay, I like this person. We really connect. We want to hang out or be intimate or whatever. But if I meet this person over here and we just really have a really strong personal connection as well, I don't have to deny that and pretend it doesn't exist or feel like a bad person or lie and have an affair or anything like that. It's just being open to whatever your truth and what your true feelings are about potentially several different people at the same time.
Okay, now I think we can kind of clarify, because this would make sense to me. Now, your mother and father obviously had you, so they did not have this type of relationship, correct?
No.
Okay, so you were not raised on the idea of this or the morality of this. This
Right.
had to happen at some point in your life where the light bulb went off. I don't know, Kat. Maybe it was a relationship gone bad. I don't know. But when did this life decision become a part of your life?
Well, actually, I was talking about that yesterday. Would you like me to tell you the story?
Absolutely.
Okay, so ironically, I was in a really good relationship. Sort of, I'd come out of a bad one where there was a lot of secrets and lies, and now finally I was with somebody who was super nice, respectful. You know, it was short. We hadn't been together for very long, but it was just really a positive experience being with this. He was, you know, a wonderful boyfriend. And then one day, I was going to an audition for a play, and I walked in, and I was really early, and I wanted to go to the bathroom, and they didn't have one. So I thought, okay, I'll go up the road and find one somewhere else, and then come back, because I was early anyways. So I left, and as I'm walking, I see this pub on the side of the road. And I'd been wanting to go somewhere else, but I saw this pub, and there's something about it, you know, the awning, whatever, that drew me into it. So I walk in, and the very first thing I see is a black cat sitting on the bar, just staring at me. And for me, I like to imagine the black cat is kind of like a signpost for me in my life. So I saw the cat, and I was like, wow, that's interesting. So I went in, and then I left, and I went back to the audition. And as I showed up, there was this guy sitting there who I'd worked with on something years before and I hadn't seen, but we'd had like a little bit of a flirtation, and I really liked him. And he had this time slot exactly before mine. So I saw him, and I was like, oh, wow. And we chatted, and then he did his audition, and he left, and then I did mine. And as I'm leaving, he's outside waiting for me. And we decided to go and get a coffee. And then as we're talking, and it's clear we're still both very much attracted to each other. And then he said, you know, let's go somewhere. And I said, I can't, because I'm with this amazing guy, and I really like him, and I can't cheat on him. But I really had this, you know, overwhelming desire to. And so I said no, and nothing happened. But then I realized that I didn't want to be in a relationship. That's just what I didn't want to. I wanted to be single, and I didn't want to be tied down to anybody. So I met up with my boyfriend, and I explained it to him, and he ironically felt the same way. And so we actually kept seeing each other for a little bit, not exclusively this time around.
Now, Kat, how long ago is this?
It was before I came here, so it's at least 10 years ago.
Wow. So, okay. Now, but Kat, here's something that goes hand in hand with that. And I don't want to misquote you.
Right.
So verify this, but I remember when we were having our conversation, you also told me that you've never been in love.
No.
I thought you said that to me.
No, I fall in love all of the time.
But what is your here's the disconnect, because to me, love part of love. Love is a lot of things to a lot of people. Right. Part of love is, you know, spending the rest of your life with that person. That's part of love. So I guess the question is, what is your definition of love then? Well, my definition of love would be to truly want another person to be truly happy. That's the main. I mean, when you're talking about being in love and romantic love, obviously there's other things connected to it. I think that it gets muddy because we, as a species, have a desire to breed, which is where romantic love comes from. I mean, that's really the origin of all of that. And so the two things are almost, you know, separate. I mean, that's where marriage and things like that came from, because really the practical reason for two people to spend their life together would be to raise children, because otherwise there wouldn't really be, first of all, there would be no need for sex if it wasn't for breeding to begin with.
So I feel like that's where that whole structure was invented, to accommodate breeding. And then people have been conditioned throughout the ages now to think of love as something that should be everlasting, that you should want to be with one person all the time, you know, forever and all this. And we've like attached romantic connotations to it that don't necessarily have to be there. For me, love can be just as romantic and just as beautiful, and sometimes more magical if it lasts a day and it doesn't take away from it. I think the problem that we find with, monogamy most of the time is that once we get into a monogamous relationship, love is no longer unconditional. It's the most conditional type of love that there is. All of a sudden it's like, yes, I love you so much, but if you lie to me once, then I don't love you anymore. Or if you do this mistake, I don't love you anymore. Or I love you because you love me. Or, a lot of people get into relationships not because they love a person, but because of their own inherent need to be loved and to feel that in return. So I think, I just want to love people like I love my cats.
Yeah, no, hey, Kat, listen, I listened intently to everything you said, and a lot of that makes sense. I mean, listen, we're a species of animals, and we want, just like animals, reproduce. They don't know each other. They
Right.
meet, two dogs meet each other in the street. The next thing you know, you're closing down the blinds in the elementary school. So everything you says makes total sense to me. But I got to ask you this interesting question, then. I mean, do you ever get jealous?
I'm the most jealous person I know.
But how would you how would you explain that?
Because of partly because I'm a Scorpio, and partly because I am a performer and I have a fragile ego. So, but I'm jealous in every situation. I mean, I can get jealous if my friend wants to hang out with another friend of his or hers, but the fact that I'm feeling jealousy at certain points doesn't necessarily mean that there should be something that is something that should be acted on.
Well, if you see, if you're dating a guy, and say you're dating several guys, right? And now you're out and with your girlfriends, and you see this guy with another girl,
yes,
and now you have the feeling of jealousy, right?
And may or may not, yes.
Well, say you do, though. Just say for argument's sake you do. What does that mean to you?
Well, let's just say I would find that easier to deal with. Well, it's just because, I think the thing with jealousy is that we get into this competitive spirit when we're in relationships. Mm-hmm. Because you don't necessarily, so I might feel jealous if my friend prefers another friend's company, for example. But it's not the same as when somebody who's your lover chooses another lover. And I think that has a lot with our conditioning, that we think that we should be the only person to somebody. And it also partly has to do with the idea that we're competing, as in whose DNA might be better to breed with. So that's like a very sort of subconscious thing that happens. But I find that easier to deal with than, for example, if I'm in a monogamous relationship with somebody who is supposed to only love me, and then maybe we're at a party and I see that he's really, really into this other girl. He's not supposed to be, and he's not doing anything, but I can feel and see that he would really, really like to maybe go home with her. I find that is like a million times worse. I'd rather than be with somebody on a just non-exclusive, okay, we like each other, but it's okay if you like somebody else.
So, Kat, in your lifetime, this lifestyle has been like for the last 10 years. So let's look at the last 10 years. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kat.
Yes. That's when I first started feeling that way, although I have been in monogamous relationships since then.
So, Kat, have you ever cried over a guy?
Oh, yes. Oh, my God. I spent hours and nights and days and weeks and months crying.
Doesn't that right there, though, tell you that the bond is stronger than just the physical. I mean, for you to have that type of a emotion over a relationship, doesn't that tell you that, what, maybe this bond is a little stronger than I thought?
No, because I think that the reason why I cried wasn't because I had such a strong bond with that person, but because it was something that he did to hurt my feeling of self-worth.
Okay, well, that makes sense then.
Because when I'm with just one person, like if I have a boyfriend or I'm trying to date somebody and he's supposed to be my only one and I'm supposed to be his only one, if he turns around and he doesn't want that anymore, all of a sudden it's like it's earth-shattering. He's just completely destroyed myself because I put so much of my self-worth and self-esteem into him loving me, that all of a sudden when that's gone, it's like it destroys my present. Whereas if I just say, okay, I'm on a basis where because it's not just about the physical when I date more than one, it's still, I'm still emotionally connected to somebody. And when we break up, maybe I had a lover for like 6 months, and then in the end he said, listen, I want to be monogamous with somebody. So he broke up with me. And I was very upset to lose him, but it's not the same feeling of, oh my God, I suck. This is terrible. My life is destroyed. You don't attach that same thing to it.
All right, listen, I hear that and I understand that, and the way you explain it, I mean, a lot of it does make sense. It's just, I don't know, just as a male, listen, Kat, let's face it, you're the ultimate catch, and it's just unfortunate that no male is ever going to be able to catch you, but you're a vixen who rules, Kat.
Right, I am. But why would you want this to be caught and trapped and cornered?
Well, because Kat, listen, if I was a much, much younger man and I was not married and I was dating you, listen, I could not live with this one and that one and the other one and this. Forget about it. Forget it. I don't even want to think about that. Kat, I want to get back in because I want to start talking about a little bit what you're doing now. But the first question I got to ask is, I leave TNA. When I leave TNA, Winter's there. All of a sudden, Winter now is not working for TNA. What happened at the tail end of TNA?
I don't know.
One day there, next day gone?
It was literally like that. I literally walked into Bound for Glory as the Knockouts champion and lost. Well, I didn't. I mean, I never got pinned. I lost the title, and then I came back. I think for maybe 3 more shows. Like one time I was at a infamous lingerie match. Another time there was the infamous bikini car wash, and I think that was the end of everything.
And that was it. No explanation, no nothing.
No explanation. There was no tail end of the story. There was really nothing. So I don't know what.
Okay, and that was only what, Kat, a couple years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, Kat, I can't, like, you are like, and I'm not going to say because I know you probably don't mind this because you're a different type of a woman, but I know women don't like when you say their age. I cannot believe how young you still are and like are not working for a major company, but that's me. So Kat, the TNA thing happens. You did your thing at the WWE, so you did that. Then you do TNA. Now TNA's done. Where are you at this point in your life now? Still very young and still with so much to offer. Where are you at that point in your life?
Well, I'm in LA. I'm doing a bunch of acting, and I'm also doing some writing, directing. Producing by default, because when you're starting out, you have to produce your own projects, because who else would do that? So yeah, I've been on a bit of a roll this year. I just did a feature, I did a couple of short films. I shot for my web series yesterday.
Now, are you talking about the web series? Now, listen, I know about and I watched it, and a little dirty, little risque there. Little risque, Kat. I watched the Red Light Diaries.
Yes.
Is that the web series you're talking about? Have we continued on with that?
We are continuing on with that. I've shot several, halves of episodes. Mainly yesterday I shot entire episode 3, but I've only shot half of episode 2, and so we're waiting for one of the actors to come back to finish that in June, and then in the meantime we're shooting the other episodes.
Kat, explain to me how this works now. Now, I've watched Red Light Diaries. Anybody can go watch that on YouTube. Now, Kat, that is directed and produced by you, correct?
Yes.
Now, Kat, so now you said you're halfway through the second one. You're working on the third one. Kat, I got to ask you this. Explain this process to me. You're in Hollywood. You know what's going on. Like when you do a web series like this, like what's the plan? I mean, why do you do a web series? What are you looking to get out of it? I mean, what's the strategy in doing your own web series like this?
Well, partly it's just to do it because I love the process of being creative, and there's nothing else in the world that can make me happier than working on something artistic. It actually happened sort of because a friend of mine was over from England, Lisa Gifford, and her husband Elazar Cabrera. He used to work for FWA, and she did as well. That's how we kept in touch. And they were over here because she'd created a web series called Threesome that she had written and directed, and her husband was producing it. And she was over here for the LA Web Fest, and she won some awards and things like that. So I was there chatting with her and Tim, and I said, wow, this is so amazing. I'm so inspired. I want to make a web series because it's amazing. Then you get to have like your own TV show. So then I thought, what can I write that basically takes place in my apartment? So I wrote a web series, based on a prostitute who lives right over there. And so then we're shooting it. So it's partly the creative process. Then it's, of course, putting it up on YouTube, getting people to watch it, getting feedback to see if people like it, what the response is. Also, if we can attract viewers and things like that. I have somebody interested in putting it out on DVD with some, add some interviews and things like that. And eventually, once it's finished, package it that way. So, and then it's just, getting your work out there, I guess.
Hey, Kat, how do you fund something like that? I mean, is that Kat doing her acting jobs and her work here and there and funding this project herself, or have you had to go out and do some fundraising?
It's basically I'm funding it myself. But hence that's why I choose to. I'm shooting it. He said everybody will know what my apartment looks like. That's why I'm shooting it here, because I don't have location costs. I'm supposed to have a permit, but, I'm shooting indoors. So you can just do that. So I bought camera equipment. I have somebody who comes and does sound for me. I bought some lights, things like that. So I can pretty much sort of do it in-house without having a huge budget. Of course, it won't be something that's like theater quality entertainment, but we can build up to that.
So your goal, when it comes to directing, producing, acting, your real first love is directing.
Well, it's interesting because I think it's becoming my first love. I always thought it was acting. All my life I thought I want to be an actress, I want to be an actress, I want to be an actress. And then once I directed a couple of things, I found the process so exhilarating that directed is almost more my favorite.
What's exhilarating about that process, Kat?
Well, it's having this vision in your mind. Ideas of you see what could happen. And then being able to direct people where to stand and go and talk and do and moving the camera in certain ways so as to reproduce what you only thought of in your head and then seeing it come to life in front of your eyes, like in a real physical form. I don't know exactly what.
I totally understand that. Hey, Kat, let me ask you a question though. Like, for just promotional sake, if not nothing else, how come you don't put yourself in, the Red Light Diaries? I mean, you've got a name. People know you. It would probably give you a little bit more exposure. Why did you make the decision not to be in it yourself?
Well, I find that when I'm directing, I'm so focused on that. And putting all my energy in making it look great and everything like that. The idea of jumping back and forth behind the camera, it would be too much for me. Plus, I'm so self-critical of myself that, afterwards because I'm basically, editing myself and things like that as well. So having to look at myself and then not being happy with my performance and things like that, I'd rather just it be other people. Although what I would like to do is, if I keep, producing things, I like the idea of doing like a Quentin Tarantino type cameo, like if I was to make a movie and then I'm just like the featured extra, maybe have a line somewhere, or I have like a little funny part or something like that.
Hey, Kat, I got to ask you this because now, you're out there in Hollywood, you're doing, your own directing. Again, it's Red Light Diaries. Go watch it on YouTube. You still do some acting, but you're around a lot of, Hollywood people, you're around a lot of men and probably, some of them are powerful men in the business. I got to ask you this again, from a woman's perspective. There's such things as attractive girls in Hollywood, but then there's a whole other category where you have attractive and intelligent, women in Hollywood where you would, obviously fall into that category. Does the combination of the two, is that a positive or a negative? When you're looking for work out in Hollywood, or does it really more depend upon the person you come across? I guess what I'm getting at, Kat, is are guys intimidated by you?
I don't think that they're intimidated by you, by me. Thank you very much for saying that. Let me answer that question as if everything that you just said was true. So then I would say I would generally, of course, say it's a positive thing. You have, sometimes you might be in a situation where you have somebody who's maybe male, and more experienced, who doesn't take you quite as seriously, or perhaps doesn't look past that. Perhaps you would like a more personal, say if you're trying to network with him professionally, he might be pretending to want to do that, but actually want to get more into like a personal experience with you. Generally, I find that I can discern that pretty quickly.
How? I'm asking you. This is why I'm asking you that, Kat. Kat, listen, I've had some meetings with Hollywood people.
Yeah.
And I got so tired of it, Kat, because it's just talk. Nobody does anything. I don't have the time or the patience for that. And that's why, like, I can't deal with that. So I can only imagine living in Hollywood and going through that every single day. Tell me how you pick that up immediately.
Well, it's just, it's just experience being around those types of people, where you can begin to tell when somebody does what you say, they're talking a lot. You can pretty much quickly figure out by the phrases that they use and the words that they use, who's really serious and who's just talking. Yeah. For starters, the people that are really serious will talk less to begin with. So.
Now, Kat, let me ask you this. Let me put you in a hypothetical situation, right? Say somebody from Hollywood, goes on YouTube and watches Red Light Diaries, because I'm plugging it here now. Okay. They watch this show, Red Light Diaries, and listen, it's a little dirty, so you'll like it. A little dirty, little whoo hoo hoo hoo. So, but say now somebody watches Red Light Diaries and they contact you, right? And say now that it's the real deal. This guy's really a player. All right. Yes. Now, say, Kat, this guy's a single guy, very attractive, and you're attracted to this guy.
Right.
Okay. Now, say the guy says, Kat, like, listen, Kat, I watched this Red Light Diaries. I love the concept here. I think we can make a series out of this, almost like Sex and the City. Right. I think we can bring this on HBO. I can get a commitment for you. We can bring this on HBO, 13 episodes. I will fund this entire project. All you've got to do is be my director. Okay? But only one circumstance. You and I have to be in a monogamous relationship.
Well, if he was serious, he would never say that. Because if he was really serious and he really thought that it had that much potential and there was that much money to be made, he would never make it conditional on.
Okay, let me ask you this, Kat. Let me ask you this then. Okay, I'll buy that. Let me ask you this. Same scenario. Now. You start dating this guy. Right. And you're attractive to this guy. You know, you wouldn't date him if you weren't attracted to him. But, you know, like you said, there are several people you're attracted to. Right. Say at that point now you can tell he wants a, one man woman, one woman man type of relationship. What do you do at that point? Do you sacrifice everything career-wise because you've made the decision not to go down that road?
Well, here's the thing, Vince. I would probably never start dating him in the first place because I would already anticipate that scenario happening down the line.
Wow, you're always like one step ahead of everybody, Kat. Unbelievable. You're always like that little, you're always anticipating the next thing.
Well, I've been around the block a few times.
So Kat, let me ask you this. So now when are we going to see the second episode of this of Red Light?
Well, this is the thing, because the second half of the second episode, we're waiting on one of the actors to get back. So that will be June to shoot it. So that will probably be then. But the good news is that in the meantime, I will be shooting, I've finished shooting episode 3. I have most of episode 4 and 5. So I'm on to 6. And
Kat, let me ask you a question. I know you're friends with Nigel McGuinness. He's out there in LA. You guys out there in LA, from the way it's been explained to me, there's a little club, there's a little networking out there with Nigel, Kat, Brian Wittenstein, who's a whole other character of a different color. And for some reason or another, like Shelly Martinez, who's going to be a guest on this show. She's out there in LA, but for some reason they won't allow Shelly in the club. She hasn't been invited in the club. It's Brian, Nigel, and Kat, and Shelly's on the outside. I'm going to talk to her a little bit about that because I told Shelly, you could be in my club. I have no problem with that. But let me ask you this, Kat. I know Nigel has done a lot of, Kickstarter. He put that great documentary together, raised all the money through Kickstarter. Kat, why don't you do something like that so you could take the production of Red Light Diaries and maybe take it to the next level?
Well, I feel specifically with Red Light Diaries that it's the production values are fine for what it is and for what I want to do with it. It's also like a bit of a practice. It's something that, having just putting my own money into it, I can control it like 100%. It's something that's exactly why I wrote it the way I did so that I could make it on that budget. If I was to do a Kickstarter or something like that, I'd rather save that.
Yeah.
For, whatever an occasion where I was like, okay, this thing, I have this idea, it has to be made, but I need help. I'd rather, because I've been, also as an actress, I've been attached to, several, people have said to me, hey, can you be in my movie? And I've said, sure. And then next thing I know, there's a Kickstarter I'm attached to, and then they haven't made the money or whatever. So I feel like the more you do it, the more it devalues the entire process. So I'd rather, if I'm going to do something like that, I have to go all out with it.
Hey, Kat, is there I know you're doing, Red Light, and now you got a couple more episodes coming out, which is great.
By the way, Shelly Martinez is in one of them.
Yeah, but now you may be throwing her a bone because you didn't let her in the club. You know what I mean? I mean, Kat, yeah, not for anything. I'll talk to Shelly about that later. But Kat, I got to ask you a question. I know Red Light Diaries is your baby. I
Yes.
know that. I understand you've done a great job with it. But is there, like, in the way back in your mind, like, is there like one dream, project that, you know what, this is going to define me? This is going to be, I'm Sylvester Stallone, a struggling and starving actor, and this movie right here is going to define me for the rest of my life. Is there that really pet project somewhere deep within your mind that, you know what, this is the one I'm saving? This is the one that that's going to define me.
Right. There's a couple, yes.
Really, there are. Yes. More like motion pictures.
There's one that's a motion picture, and then there's one that's like a TV series.
Now, Kat, have you started writing any of those?
Yes, I have.
Do you enjoy writing, Kat?
I do. I love writing. I sometimes find it difficult to get myself to sit and do it.
Yeah, but isn't that because you don't love to do it?
Well, I ask myself that, but then when I do start writing and I start getting into it, I feel a similar type of euphoria come over me as I do when I'm directing. And I know you know about all of this. When you're sitting and you start writing, and all of a sudden you're not thinking anymore. It's your fingers are writing and you're watching what's coming out.
Kat, I'm gonna share a line with you now that you can steal from me because I stole it from somebody, right?
Okay.
Do you remember? I'm sure you know the show The Odd Couple, right?
No.
You don't know The Odd Couple? Felix and Oscar, The Odd Couple?
I don't think I've seen it. No.
On me. I'm forgetting how young you are and how old I am. Anyway, Kat, listen, Oscar Madison is a sports writer, right? And this is what Oscar Madison said about writing. I love this line, and this is exactly what you'll say. You ready? A great writer hates to write, but loves to have written, right?
Uh-huh.
Isn't that in a nutshell? You hate to write, but when you write something and it's in front of you and you finish it, you love to have written it.
Right. But then there's that moment that I just spoke of when it starts flowing and it's just. But here's the thing, right? Because when I was little, I used to write all the time. I taught myself to type when I was maybe 9, 10. I had a typewriter and I would sit. That was my other hobby. Like I would read for hours and I would sit and I would write for hours. And wow. I loved doing it. And I did it for no other reason but to do it. And what I realized was that at the time it was partly because I was, again, like when kids at play, completely unself-critical. Like I would just write for the enjoyment of it. Now when I write, I'm questioning myself the entire time. I'm thinking, is this good? Does this suck? Oh no, what should the next sentence be?
Yeah, but listen, but Kat, when it's coming out of you and you're writing and you're writing and it's raw emotion, you know that it's good.
Right.
You know? Well, Kat, listen, the way I see things here, I think you've got everything in your life going for you. You know, you've got this career now where you're directing. Now it was just the pilot with Red Light. Now we're going on to the second and third, the second and third episodes. You know, you're in there in the heart of Hollywood. You know, you're still acting. I think, you have the world on a string, Kat. You have the talent. You have the brains where you can write your own ticket. Now, you got to remember, though, there's such a thing as karma. And, you guys not allowing, fun time, Shelly, in the club. This might come back to haunt. I know you're trying to make it up. You're giving her a little non-speaking part in one of these episodes. But, Kat, listen, I want to tell you, you are, again, I'll give you a comeback now for Shelly. Go ahead.
First of all, she has a very important speaking part. Second of all, There is no such club. The club is a myth that Shelly invented.
Shelly was pretty convincing that you guys are keeping her out of this club.
No, I think what it is Brian Wittenstein's club that sometimes I'm invited to, that maybe she hadn't been invited to previously because he didn't have her telephone number.
Well, Kat, can I give you some advice? I would not belong to any club that Brian Wittenstein is a part of. No club. No, even if he paid me to join the club, I would still turn down the offer to join the club with Brian Wittenstein.
There is no club.
All right. Well, anyway, Kat, listen, you are such a you're such a bright light, Kat. I love the fact that you're out there doing what you want to do. This is somebody, and that's why, the show is all about women and Vixens that rule. This is about a woman, out there making her dream happen, going to the dream, meeting it head on. Kat, I always say this. I say this to my own kids. There are those that talk about it, and there are those that do it. That's the difference with being successful or not successful. You had an idea. You had a vision. You're out there and you're doing it. And that should be an inspiration to anybody watching this interview.
Well, thank you. I have a quote for that as well. It goes like this. Those people saying that it cannot be done should not interrupt those doing it.
I love that. Now, that's a good line. That is a great note to end on. And, Kat, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Listen, if we're not too far away from that second episode, you said you're going to finish it up in June, but then you got to go. You do all the editing and everything, right, Kat?
Yeah, but I'm gonna try and finish everything else before that, so we can just insert that little scene and it'll be good to go.
And then right when the second one comes out, can we bring you back on the show to talk about it?
Yes, please. That would be amazing.
Now, can you guarantee us, though? Listen, I don't want to get into this again, but you got Shelly. She's coming. She's doing the part. Is there any guarantee that she's not going to wind up on the cutting room floor?
I can guarantee you she will.
All right. Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better.
Shelly.
That makes me feel a little bit better. But Kat, listen.
Too.
I want to thank you not only for this interview. I want to thank you for the experience of getting to work with somebody as talented as you. I consider that a blessing. I consider it a blessing that we met up again about a month ago and that we're talking here and that you're going to become a friend of the show. And as I said, when we're ready for the second episode of Red Light Diaries, I want you to come here first and talk about it.
Thank you. Well, I'm also very grateful for you. Obviously, without you, there would have been no Winter and TNA, which is one of the highlights of my entire career. So,
hey, listen, you did not need Vince Russo to be successful and do what you're doing now. That was charted out for you long before I came along. But listen, I want to thank you. Keep doing what you're doing because you're destined for success. You have my word on that.
Thank you, Vince.
All right. Hey, hold on there for a second. I'm going to sign off here, but then I want to say personally thank you. Goodbye. But everybody, this was the second installment of Vixens Who Rule. We just spoke to Katrina, Waters. I almost said Katrina Winters, combination of the two. But, you just saw strong, powerful woman chasing her dream. That's what this show is all about. Obviously, I'm going to share the video with you. I'm not going to hog it all myself. You're going to get to see the beauty of this woman as well as the intellect. But I want to thank you for joining us. Listen, next week on this show, because I'm that kind of a guy, Shelly Martinez is coming on. We're going to hear her side of the story about being excluded from clubs and, getting parts where she don't talk. Well, we're going to handle that. But for now, I want to thank everybody for joining me here, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Thank you for having me.